Okay, you're in for a treat. Our first speaker is the Honorable Patrick Henry. Put your minds back into 1765. He was addressing the Assembly of the Colony of Virginia with a very important message. So I turn it over now to Mr. Patrick Henry.
It is my distinct privilege to address a body of fellow patriots on this day, and I wish to thank you for giving me the invite to speak and providing me with refreshments. I want to transport you back in time to my beloved colony of Virginia. For the first time in a very long time, the Virginia House of Burgesses was assembling. A spring day, March 23rd, 1775. We had not assembled in some time, since the royal governor, Lord Dunmore, had tyrannically dissolved our assembly some time before, and hence the reason we were assembling in Richmond rather than at the colonial capital of Williamsburg, where we justly belonged. I had only recently returned from the Continental Congress in Philadelphia and was taking up my seat in the House of Burgesses. It was a body of timid and fearful, yet sincere and committed men who assembled on that spring day at St. John's Church. We were groping in darkness, unsure how boldly to assert our rights as freemen and yet preserve our liberty. Up to Thursday the 23rd, we had accomplished little of note, save several timid half measures. I grew loathsome of our inability to come to grips with the inevitable nature of the conflict. And so I rose and introduced a resolution that our colony be immediately put into a state of defense and that a militia be raised, organized, and equipped for that purpose. You cannot imagine the opposition with which my resolution was met. Men of notoriety, distinguished men who would later distinguish themselves in our great struggle, rose to express their deepest reservations and most adamant opposition to my resolution. They insisted that it was too much, too soon, that it would merely serve to discuss what friends we supposedly still had in Parliament. And why, they asked, would we resort to such desperate measures of despair, as they called them, when there was still such room for hope of peace and reconciliation? Unable to bear any longer our own self-delusion in this great crisis, I rose and addressed the House of Burgesses. Mr. President, no man thinks more highly than I do of the patriotism as well as abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have just addressed the House. But different men often see the same subject in different lights. And therefore I hope it will not be thought disrespectful to those gentlemen if, entertaining as I do opinions of a character very opposite to their own, I shall speak forth my sentiments freely and without reserve. This is no time for ceremony. The question before the House is one of awful moment to this country. For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery. And in proportion to the magnitude of the subject ought to be the freedom of debate. It is only in this way that we can hope to arrive at truth and to fulfill our great responsibility to God and our country. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time through fear of giving offense, I should consider myself guilty of treason toward my country and of an act of disloyalty toward the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kings. Mr. President, it is natural to man to indulge in the illusions of hope. we are apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth, and to listen to the song of that siren till she transforms us to beasts. Is this the part of wise men, engaged in a great and arduous struggle for liberty? Are we disposed to be of the number of those who, having eyes, see not, and having ears, hear not those things which so nearly concern our temporal salvation? For my part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging of the future but by the past. And judging by the past, I wish to know what there has been in the conduct of the British ministry for the past 10 years to justify those hopes with which gentlemen have been pleased to solace themselves and the House. Is it that insidious smile with which our petition has been so lately received? Trust it not, sir. It will prove a snare unto your feet. Suffer not yourselves to be betrayed with a kiss. Ask yourselves how this gracious reception of our petition comports with those warlike preparations which cover our waters and darken our land. Are fleets and armies necessary to a work of love and reconciliation? Have we shown ourselves so unwilling to be reconciled that force must be called in to win back our love? Let us not deceive ourselves, sir. These are the implements of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. I ask, gentlemen, sir, what means this martial array if its purpose be not to force us to submission? Can gentlemen assign any other possible motive for it? Has Great Britain any enemy in this quarter of the world to call for such accumulation of navies and armies? No, sir. She has none. They are meant for us. They can be meant for no other. They are sent over to bind and to rivet upon us those chains which the British ministry has been so long forging. And what have we to oppose them? Shall we try argument? Sir, we have been trying that for the past 10 years. Have we anything new to offer upon the subject? Nothing. We have held the subject up in every light of which it is capable, but it has been all in vain. Shall we resort to entreaty and humble supplication? What terms shall we find which have not been already exhausted? Let us not, I beseech you, sir, deceive ourselves longer. Sir, we have done everything which could be done to avert the storm which is now coming on. We have petitioned. We have remonstrated. We have supplicated. We have prostrated ourselves before the foot of the throne and have implored its interposition to arrest the tyrannical hands of the ministry and parliament. Our petitions have been slighted. Our remonstrances have produced additional violence and insult. Our supplications have been disregarded, and we have been burned with contempt from the foot of the throne. In vain, after these things, may gentlemen indulge in the fond hope of peace and reconciliation. there is no longer any room for hope. If we wish to be free, if we mean to preserve inviolate those inestimable privileges for which we have been so long contending, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, and which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon till the glorious object of our contest shall be obtained, we must fight! I repeat it, sir, we must fight! An appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all that is left us. They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so formidable of an adversary. But when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week? Or the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed and when a British Guard is stationed in every house? Shall we gather strength by irresolution and inaction? Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs and hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemies have bound us hand and foot? Sir, we are not weak if we make a proper use of those means which the God of nature hath placed in our power. 3 millions of people, armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country as that we possess, are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just power who presides over the destinies of nations and who will raise up friends to fight our battles for us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Besides, sir, we have no election. If we were base enough to desire it, it is now too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard upon the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come. It is vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear? Or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and of slavery? Forbid it! Almighty God! I know not what course others may take. But as for me, give me liberty, or give me death!